What's up, everybody? It's Jared with Capture the Magic. And when it comes to the Disney parks, I kind of find it a very interesting sort of situation right now. As in Disney World, you have the Rivers of America, Tom Sawyer Island are now closed, making way for new things. And then out at Disneyland, they're getting ready to premiere the new Walt Disney animatronic show that they're going to do. I think it's really important, to keep the presence of Walt in the Disney parks, understanding that none of these things would be there if it was not for Walt Disney himself. This is one reason why I don't like seeing the Rivers of America go away and some of these other things that do have connections to him, but I do like seeing more things that are Walt-centric coming to the parks. And on that topic, on a recent theme park and live stream, we had a really good conversation about Walt Disney's impact and how that has basically really changed them in terms of made up the theme park industry itself in many ways, and how I think it's important to show what Walt Disney was able to accomplish, especially to the younger generations, because as time goes on, it's going to be easier and easier to forget about Walt Disney. And he's not just a company, but it was a man that was able to do the things that he did. And I thought it was a really good one to showcase in a video. So that is what we're going to do here and start with this conversation takes off. Is there a lot of excitement for that out there? I've seen some mixed stuff. I know some of the family have been against it a little bit, like Walt's granddaughter and stuff like that. But is there legitimate people pretty excited for this?
I think most people, including myself, I think most people are sort of cautiously excited. Like if they nail the animatronic, if this thing looks like Walt, he moves like Walt, he's gonna sound like Walt because they're using his voice.
Right.
But if they nail this animatronic, this could be a very emotional experience for Disney fans, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that coin, if it's malfunctioning and spitting out Bob Chapek lines and glitching out, we have a problem. And that could be the biggest disaster we've ever seen. So it can kind of go either way,
And I think right now that's why Disney has it on virtual queue, because I think they're already anticipating on a lot of people coming for this, especially opening day for Disneyland's actual birthday. And because if you actually go on, a lot of the hotels in the surrounding area are actually booked out. There's no rooms left for the first, I'd say, 2 days of the 17th and the 18th. And there's going to be 2 virtual queues. There's going to be one at 7 a.m. and one at 12 noon. Okay.
So they're only doing 2 showings?
No, I think it's throughout the day, but they're dropping
drops.
to, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think Slimer said in the group chat of you get some Chesterfield smoke putting in there, have the full Walt effect, he should have a pipe or something. But yeah.
Oh, the Chesterfields was perfect, man. I was rolling when I saw that text. I was like, okay, Slimer. Okay, I see you, bro.
You're like, wow, it even smells like Walt. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I do wonder if this goes over well. I mean, if they do bring this to Disney World, I could see it maybe.
Oh, absolutely. They could even splash a little whiskey on the carpet, make it really with the Chesterfields and the whiskey.
Hey,
it was
I feel like that's a good Walt cologne is Chesterfields and whiskey. And you're like, man, it smells like my grandpa.
Absolutely.
Cool.
But if it does go to Walt Disney World, I mean, that would be pretty dope. I mean, we've talked about it, George, right? Where maybe Carousel of Progress or something, you can incorporate it into there somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, my thing was go all out, and honestly, even add the Sherman Brothers to it, where they're at the piano playing A Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow in that kind of rendition. To pay tribute to the classic Carousel of Progress. I think that would be really cool.
I mean, they did have that old project, that old theater they were going to do on Main Street that they ended up canceling. I mean, you could bring something like that back and put that in there off of Main Street, maybe like that. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes over well if it made its way to their places. But I just haven't known. I got obviously over here, I see what some people say about it, but I just haven't seen if there's a ton of excitement or people are just sort of wait and see mode. Or
well, the weird thing too is I think but this is not a normie thing at all.
Right. Yeah.
The soccer mom ain't bringing her kids to see Walt animatronic, right? So it's kind of weird to me that they put this much money into something just for, well, I guess it shouldn't surprise me because we talked about they're really leaning into Disney adults. So maybe that's, I don't know.
And I'm torn. I understand if the family has reservations, I've always been that's tough. If you have the granddaughters against it, but I'm not against, I'm actually for more Walt representation in the parks. That's why the Rivers I don't like seeing going away, because it does, even though it's not the original, but it does have a connection to Walt, and I
Yeah.
don't like losing more of those things. But if it was done well, like I would be all for a Walt type of thing where people can learn more about him. Like they
Absolutely.
have that in Hollywood studios, but like nobody ever goes in there. It's like the little Walt Museum. They've taken stuff out of there over the years, so it doesn't have as much stuff in there as it used to. But it is cool to go in there, and like as time goes on, it's going to be harder and harder for people to understand that this was built by one guy that just had an idea. And to be quite honest, like if you look at the history of them, like there's no reason any of this stuff should have worked. None.
Yeah.
Like I said, as I said back then, like it's so much easier now to do things. You have so many more tools and investment money, like all these things. Like back when he did it, like it's crazy. Like when you I remember watching and reading some books on it in a documentary. I'm just like, he should have stopped. Like he literally like was just almost insane. He's just like, no, I'm going to do it. And it's just, and the fact that it worked and it is what it is now, it's crazy.
Well, it's like that Steve Jobs quote where I'm paraphrasing, but he said it's the crazy ones who change the world.
Yep.
You know, it's the ones who everyone says, "Oh, you're nuts for doing that."
Yeah.
And then you're a genius when it works, right?
Yep. Well, and it's like people talk about, you'll hear some people say, well, Walt wasn't the nicest guy. I'm like, he probably wasn't. Because you couldn't. I mean, nice guys don't build that empire by just being like, oh, it's okay to mess that up. You're like, you hear Steve Jobs, like, I think it was Mr. Fantastic. He said he used to work for Steve Jobs, and he was like, he was an asshole. Like he was a hardcore, like didn't care about any distractions, but he's like, he was right and he got results and he didn't care if it made you mad. And on some level, like, and this is kind of what I think is missing from Disney a bit, is like Eisner kind of had that too, where he was like, he had a vision, but like you could see that bulldog in him if he needed to and just be like, I don't care, we're doing this. Whereas I don't think Iger is that. Now he might be behind the scenes. I'm sure he's conniving on some level, and like DMR, you don't get to that spot by being, you know, chummy with everybody. But
yeah, no, Walt was a tough dude. He definitely put on the Uncle Walt thing for sure.
Sure.
But he was because you hear like the 9 old men and their descriptions of him, like when he walks in the room, they would all like, you know, oh, he's here. Like I think it was who was it? Was it Ward? I think it was Ward Kimball said when Walt would come in, when they would hear him go down the hall, they would say, "Man is in the forest." Like the old Bambi.
I've heard that.
Yeah. So they respected him, they loved him, but they didn't mess with him, you know?
Right. Well, they knew like he had a certain, like he expected a certain level from the people that worked for him. And you know, on some level you need that.
As we get further and further and further away from Walt, and really there's not too many people now that have worked for him. I think the only one that can really come to mind right now is Bob Gurr. There might be a few others, but very small pool right now of people that work directly for him. And as we get further and further and further away from that, it's important to sort of like let younger generations know this was a man. This is what he did. So this animatronic show works towards that. Even little things like the partner statue.
Yep.
And the statues they put in like DCA and around the world, those matter because your kids walk by and go, "Oh, who's that?" "Oh, okay. Well, let me tell you, son."
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because like I mean, and we all at times have our critiques of what Disney does nowadays, but like my daughter, we went to the parks couple years ago and she saw the partner statue. She was like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "Well, it's Walt Disney." And she's like, "Oh, he has the same name as the park." And I was like, "Well, he built." I explained to her, like, we were waiting for the fireworks. I was going on about what he did, and she was like, "He did all that?" I'm like, "Yeah, he did." And she was like, "How?" And I'm like, "That's a great question," because none of it. But it's like, it's still like it, because sometimes she'll just be like, we'll go somewhere and she's like, "Did he build this?" And she's about Hollywood Studios. I'm like, "No, he didn't build this one." But I was like, you know, he built the other things and this inspired those, but none of this would be here if it wasn't for him. And she's like, wow. Like, and I just like being able to relay that to her of like, you can do stuff, and that, like, you know, it's legacy and things like that.
It's important. It's important. And that's exactly it. Like these things are conversation starters for young people.
Yep.
And
well, it's not inspiring too. That's why I always liked Wishes, and like even Happily Ever After. It's like at least you come away like, I always felt like Wishes made you feel like if you're having a rough day, you could be like, it's gonna be okay. Like, you know, and if you read about like successful people, like Walt had some bad days, like real bad days. And you know, it's just like it's a good thing for people to learn of like not just the end point. And I've always said this like athletes too, is like nobody sees these guys when they're 16 and they're grinding through everything. You see them at the end and you're like, "Oh, it must be nice." But it's like, how many hours were put in and how many setbacks were there? And like, I think it's good for people to learn those things and perseverance. Like I feel like sometimes that's missed in our modern age of just wanting everything instantly.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And failure is very, very important, because failure is how you grow. I mean, that's how Walt Disney had a lot, like you were saying, Jared. Walt Disney had a lot of failure in his career. But that failure, like, look, one of the biggest failures was losing Oswald.
Yep.
But it led to one of his biggest wins, which is Mickey.
Yep.
Right? So it's like that. It's so important, you know. But you're right. In today's day and age, people just want instant success.
Yeah,
they want to bypass all the failure stuff. Well, the failure stuff is what's going to build your character. So when you are successful, you're even better, you know?
Yep. Well, I was liking it to I have a business degree, and I can tell you sports and fitness have taught me more about business than my business degree has. Because you learn a lot through failure, and like if you want to get stronger, it's like you're going to fail constantly, and it hurts and it sucks. If you want to bench 300 pounds, you're going to have a lot of times where it just ends up on your chest. And it's like, obviously you want to do it a safe way, but it teaches you about like keep going and going after things. And I think that's something I wish would be brought more into, like, even say like Epcot. Like you used to have more of an educational format to that, like have more stuff like that to kind of show that part of it. I think it's a good thing for kids, especially, of just like
100%.
So failure is, like you said, you need it, and then it's how you react to that. And I mean, I always tell people all the time, like, read stuff about Walt. It'll inspire you to do stuff, because, like I said, he had no business in doing the things he did when he did them, but he did it.
He did it, and none of the three of us wouldn't be here right now talking if it wasn't for that man.
Well, that's the thing. What would there even be theme? I mean, the theme park world. I mean, they basically created that whole idea from just being like, I want to create this space for this, and like created a whole thing around it. Like, you know, it's kind of crazy to think about the norms of today were just he thought of them.
And he was like that classic sort of like, I don't know. I mean, obviously I never met him, but like he has that classic masculinity. Like he was really like, you know, I don't know. He was cool, man. He was really cool. I don't think we'll never see another guy like that.
No, I don't think so. I've said that. I mean, it's difficult if like you look at like what would Walt do? I'm like, right, but there's one Walt. Like, you're not going to have another one come out. The closest I think you're ever going to get to a CEO that was like him, and I say like him, very, very small like him, was like Eisner, of having that like vision and risk taking, and not everything he did worked, but he saved Disney in a time when they needed it, and it was due to. And I think this is something Disney needs now, which is a vision for what you want, and not just reacting to what Universal is doing or the current trends. It's like, where do we want to take these things? What do we want to do? And having a vision and applying that. I think without somebody that has a visionary leader type to do that, it just doesn't come naturally to a company. And then you kind of get wayward.
Yeah. And what's interesting with Michael Eisner is he took the Uncle Walt thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he did it, but he made it his own.
Yeah.
Like Eisner had his own he did the same kind of thing, but he had his own little style with it, you know?
Yeah.
And it was cool seeing him like host like the Wonderful World of Disney and stuff like that. You know, I can't see like Bob Iger doing that. Like Bob Iger is much more of a businessman.
Yeah. Bob Iger comes out of the woodwork when there's something that is to be announced, where Eisner was out there in the crowd getting his hands dirty with whether it was big news or very little significance to anything. It was just, you know, hi, I'm Michael Eisner, CEO of the Walt Disney Company. You know, that was him going out with his baseball cap and his Mickey T-shirt and his jeans, and walking the quads. That is, that's at times, and I get it. You have to keep some sort of like prestige, kind of mentality as a CEO, but it's like, loosen up a bit, like loosen the tie, open up your shirt a little bit. Yeah,
that's the one thing. Bob Iger actually does have charisma. He's actually a charming dude, but he's like Tony Stark charming. Like he's not like fun, lovable. I'm going to wear a Kermit tie and introduce the Wonderful World of Disney kind of guy, right? Yeah. He's got like that. It's not the same kind of vibe.
You get the vibe from Iger that he's trying to sell you something that you don't really want. Kind of like it, but he's charismatic in a way, and you're like, I don't know, and he's just like, no, you want this product. Whereas I feel like Walt, especially, but maybe Eisner would like tell you a story and there's been talked about Disney before where it's like, I think one of the Imagineers said it was like, classic Disney was giving you something you weren't asking for. And then once you experience it, you're like, I didn't know I needed that, but I needed it.
Right.
And I think that's that can be like, well, what do you mean by that? And it's like, you almost get there by having a vision and believing in it and being like convincing people of your vision through your storytelling. And I think that's missing a lot of in the modern day Disney, of like that storytelling aspect from the CEO down. Of doing it. And like Eisner was very like, he loved Walt. He constantly was like, it wasn't like he took it as like he was intimidated by Walt. He was like, no, like we're expanding on Walt did, and talked about Mickey Mouse all the time. So like he did it in a very like interesting way that it was his own, like you were saying, but at the same time he paid homage to it and respected what came before him, but also had a vision for where he wanted to take it. I know Iger gives lip service sometimes, but I just don't believe him when he says like, I go to Walt's office all the time and think. I'm like, do you really? Like, or do you just go take a nap in there and then you come out and you're like, by the way, can we buy something else? Like, it just that's the vibe I get.
Yeah.
Really, I always thought that was his subtle way of saying he thinks in the John.
I mean, we do know he likes to take multiple showers.
That's true. That was confirmed.
All right, that's going to be it for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about all this? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.